Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the podcast where it turns out sequels are hard, aren't they, Chris? Endings, pretty hard, aren't they?
Yeah, we were so positive, man. We were so like, I think 2 and 3 are going to be better than we think. I think this is going to be, good. It's going to be fun. Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it, but it doesn't feel like a Matrix film, does it? This third one
Doesn't feel like a film, Chris.
We'll get to that.
It doesn't feel like a film. I would describe this as colours and noises devoid of anything.
Well, before we do that, Dan, let's get out of the way. Let's do some housekeeping. Are you ready, Dan, for some good news and then some all right caveat news? But
okay, so can I guess the good news?
You got to guess the good news, man. The good news. People have been waiting for it.
Yeah.
I reckon more people are tuning in for this than than our review of the third Matrix.
I'll ask the question then, Chris. Is your toilet still constantly pouring water?
The toilet has been fixed.
Woof.
Yep. The plumber guy came round. He's a family friend. He's a good guy.
Yep.
He replaced the part that was replaced back in May, but he replaced it with a different type of part, which shouldn't do what this type of part did.
Right.
It's all very exciting.
So now I'm waiting for the bad news.
Well, no. So it's not bad news at all. It's just ironic news. So,
okay.
Toilet's fixed. If there was any noise before, you won't get that noise. Jess at some point is coming in with a cup of tea, I believe, and a piece of toast, which will in fact make more noise, but for less time. So, and
right.
I'm getting a piece of toast out of it. So
everyone wins.
Sourdough bread down.
Sourdough bread.
I'm winning.
I mean, you could have just got up slightly earlier and eaten before we recorded a podcast, but it's fine.
All right. Well, I could have moved house to avoid the toilet sound. But
that would be a ridiculous expense and lifestyle change to go through. But waking up 5 minutes earlier isn't 10 minutes earlier, isn't a lot to ask. I mean, my alarm went off at 6:45. No, sorry, 7:45. So I'd have time to breakfast and do the triv.
But I was sleepy, Dan.
Well, I noticed it's funny actually because I noticed, Chris, when so Chris and I text each other once we're ready to go because we do this podcast over the phone. People don't always realise we have microphones in separate places that record us, and then we have, because our chemistry is so good, people don't always notice.
Not this morning, but in general.
Not this morning, no. So I get it. So at 9:02, 9:03, we were supposed to record at 9. I was a little bit late. Because I as always, my body decides it needs the toilet usually about the time we need to start the podcast every time.
Yeah, I mean, you could have
just a mental thing.
You could have got up 10 minutes earlier to address that, couldn't you? But that's fine, whatever.
Well, no, because if I'd have got 10 minutes earlier to address that, I still wouldn't have needed the toilet until about a minute before the podcast. That is just the way my body seems to do it now. Yeah. I don't understand. It's like my body goes, you're podcasting, you need to pee as late as possible because you're not going to be allowed to pee for quite some time. So it's like my brain somehow knows that and waits for the last possible second. I could have got up at 3 a.m. I'd have still needed a piss at 9:01.
That makes more sense because you'd have been up, you'd have been drinking, But Dan, if I'd have got up 10 minutes earlier, I still would have wanted more toast. So I don't know why I'm not allowed that concession.
Well, it would just be, and I guess this
just
really
be bonus toast.
I guess this really proves how little we want to talk about this film. But because this film fucking just all enthusiasm for anything Matrix just gone now. But when
I don't think it's that. I've got some defences of the film a little bit.
No, there's no defense of this film. Absolutely none at all. It is a failure on absolutely every level. We'll come back to it. When I get, so when I send you the text at like 9:02 or 9:03 or something like that, once I've gone for my inevitable last minute piss, I notice the last time you were up on WhatsApp was 1:45 a.m. and I thought, he's going to be a sleepy boy this morning. He's going to be, he's going to be a grumpy boy. He's going to be a little bit dour because he's going to be half asleep. Bless him, And then I get a text that's a voice note. That's not you saying, I'm ready to do the podcast, but you singing the song. I guess it's just called You Sexy Thing.
I think it's You Sexy Thing.
Probably called Miracle or something, right?
No, it's called You Sexy Thing by
Is it
Right
actually
Said
called
Fred.
you?
That's
Okay. Fair enough. You singing a special bespoke version of that includes my name, and then telling me you're ready. And I thought, fucking hell, he's got way more energy.
Well,
Maybe he's already had his toast. I thought to myself.
Yeah, and maybe he's covered it in sugar. The phrase "your special version of You Sexy Thing" implies I've done that before. I don't think I have, but maybe I have.
It was a special bespoke version that included my name, which
Yes,
I acknowowledge I've never heard before, but it was very
Okay, cool.
It was very
the
good.
way you said it almost made it sound like, no, here's Chris ringing me to sing Right Said Fred again.
Yeah, he's doing his.
Dan.
Oh god, it's a 12-second voice note. He sent me You Sexy Thing again. God damn it, Chris! You write the lyrics once, you just keep making the use of them.
It was one of those things where Jess very kindly was like, right, you stay down here and watch the film on the bigger TV, and I'll go upstairs, which was very sweet of her. But it's one of those things where once that happens, especially on a Friday night, like if I'm down, like mostly we're together, but if for whatever reason, I want to watch something Jess doesn't want to watch or something, that means I'm probably just gonna just do that sort of pissing about thing. So I watched the film, and then I watched the latest episode of Curb, which was great. For those that don't know, it's back. Curb's back. And then
They'll definitely know by the time they hear this in December.
Yeah, Curb's probably finished now. But did you know Curb was back? It surprised me. It just appeared on the Skybox. I was like, oh yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I've been holding off because me and Nadia are planning on catching up before we watch that season.
Fair enough.
And let's be honest, he's not going to make another one for like 3 years, so we've got time.
Oh yeah, you got the sweet time. You just have to watch it before the Statics in case that bad boy gets nominated. And then
what if I refuse? What if I refuse to watch it before the Statics? Well then, Chris, what are you going to do then?
Fine, you just won't have watched it. We've done that before.
But you just said, well, you better watch it before the Static. I'm thinking, what's the consequence?
I'll just never have toast before a podcast again. Every podcast will just be me eating toast for 2023. If you've not seen Curb,
I feel like the toast situation, Chris, has put us on opposite sides. I feel like today we're sort of antagonists of each other for no reason other than you could have woke up 10 minutes early.
I've already justified that. I'd have needed more toast. I'd have wanted more toast. I don't even know. Jess hasn't even said she's doing toast. I'm hopeful for toast in a way, Dan, because often.
And by repeatedly talking about the toast, are you hoping that she'll hear that and go, "Oh, Chris wants some toast"? Like she's overheard you saying sourdough bread, downstairs, and going, "Oh, here we go. He wants toast."
No, because I think, and this is going to make me sound like a monster, I don't think she would have done, because I think she might have headphones in while she does housework, which sounds atrocious that I'm sat here fucking rambling with you about toast and fucking songs. Right said for the fact that my wife is doing the housework whilst I sit on the phone to you talking about Right Said Fred is a horrible state of affairs that I feel very guilty about. So, anyway, shall we do our job, Dan?
Should we talk about this fucking movie?
Our job and talk about the Matrix Revolutions.
Yeah. So,
would you, Dan? Now, bearing in mind, you've recommended parts 1 and 2.
Yep.
And this would be completing the trilogy. Would you recommend people see this film?
If you've seen the first 2, you might as well.
Thoughts.
If you've seen the first 2, you might as well. But if you didn't bother, you just listened to our podcast, I'm now going to change my entire thing and say, don't fucking bother with any of this shit.
What, even the first?
Well, the first one's fine on its own, but fuck me, these sequels, this is a real mess. I'll tell you what it is, and well, I'll very briefly recount my experience when I was younger with this, which is, I suppose, a little bit like what you described, because you described last week, your overriding feeling coming out of the second one was, they'll fix it with the third. It'll make sense with the third.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't distinctly remember thinking that, but I must have, because I just remember the crushing disappointment of this movie. And I always thought I was overreacting. Always. Like, well, I say, okay, let me rephrase that. When that was recent in my memory, it was, what third movie? What sequels? There are no Matrix sequels for many years. And then, at a certain point, I went, oh, come on, they're probably not that bad. Like, calm yourself. they're that bad. In fact, I would argue it's worse than I remember. This third one. One of the most shocking, embarrassing, poorly thought out 2 hours of storytelling I've ever come across. I can't imagine how you get from the first Matrix to even the second one, which we both complimented for many, many reasons, to this tripe. This is meaningless drivel, colours and noises, with a few little bits of sort of philosophy and ideas at the end that sort of tie into the other ones, but the whole movie is so disconnected from anything of meaning or value or characters with fucking thoughts and feelings. And I honestly, I could not believe what I was watching yesterday. And I'll tell you what the overriding thought was watching it yesterday, Chris. Boredom. Utter boredom. I had to put my phone in a different place so I could concentrate. Because I was I could feel myself reaching for it constantly. I didn't, because I knew I had to watch it for this. And it's very important we watch these films properly to give them a fair shot. And when you're in your own home, it's very tempting to be looking at your phone, but that's not the way you need to do it if you're going to review a movie, because then you're going to sit here and go, that didn't make sense, and you just missed a scene where they explain it. I watched this movie top to bottom. I did not look away. That was a fucking challenge. It was difficult just to keep my eyes open during one section. What a mess.
I'm
going
not
to
as
why.
hard
Don't worry,
on
I'm not
it.
just leaving it there.
Yeah.
But fucking hell, it's bad.
I'm not as hard on it, which we'll also go into. But I do echo a lot of what you're saying, and I think I'm trying to think. I think potentially the most disappointed I've ever felt coming out of a film. Actually, like, I so remember coming out and going, "Oh, it didn't resolve it. It didn't. I'm not sure. I know what just happened," which I don't feel like now. I think this is probably the simplest of the films to understand, because only about 4 things happen. But so I don't feel that now. But at the time, I was like, it didn't answer. I almost kind of wanted a scene, I guess, in my young head of like them going, "Oh, by the way, right, to clarify, this is what that shit meant last time." But we didn't get that. But also just, I couldn't put my finger on it like I could now. It's not really a Matrix movie. But I absolutely was devastated. Like, I just remember so vividly coming out of the cinema and being like, oh shit. Like, damn. And yeah, I'm not sure I've ever really... There have been times where it's been like, I've found flaws in the film, but they're almost like quite fun to dissect with people. Like, I remember watching Venom at the cinema and just loving the experience because it's fucking ridiculous. I remember Stuck on You felt a bit long. Stuck on You, but I think also we thought we had like time to get a train, and Stuck on You is like so long and not overly funny. And I remember as a kid, Dan, thinking Cats and Dogs didn't have a lot of merit, thinking all the best bits were in the trailer. Random films, but just an honest dissection of my disappointment in the cinema back, over time. But this one, it was really just flat. It was like, oh, like even Cats and Dogs and Stuck on You, I didn't really come out feeling flat. But this, disappointment is the word I would use. Just real gut wrenching. Oh, fuck. It was my cinema experience of it.
Yeah.
I would recommend it in the sense, if you've seen the first 2, you might as well. I think I'm a real completionist. I can't imagine anyone just watching the first and not wanting to check out the sequels in the way that I had to watch the final series of That 70s Show, even though everyone said it was crap. Although I've not done that with Scrubs, interestingly. Saw one episode of like the series after it actually should have ended and was like, nah, I'm out. But I was watching it like... Because actually, and I said this to you in WhatsApp, but we are going to disagree on this, obviously. I said I would rather sit down and... If you made me tomorrow rewatch Reloaded or Revolutions, I would choose Revolutions.
That's insane to me. That is so... I honestly, Chris, I genuinely, like a cartoon character, my mouth fell open when I read that. I could not believe what I was reading. I thought you'd gotten the names mixed up. I was honestly going to text you. You mean Reloaded, obviously. Like, genuinely, without question. I nearly wrote that before I thought, no, I think he actually means Revolutions. Like, what's wrong with you?
I tell you what, the titles are actually better the other way around, aren't they? Because the second one's about a revolution. And, I mean, it would be a spoiler, but then in the third one, it gets reloaded.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But yeah, I mean, just random words beginning with R, like, there'll be after if the Matrix Resurrections is good, it'll be like the Matrix Redemption, whatever other words start with RE. It's just gonna get randomer and randomer, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
My favourite will be when they get to the 10th one. It's like Matrix Redirection, I guess. Like they're just running out of like words that begin with RE.
And that film's like amazing, and it all makes sense, and that's the redirection.
Yeah,
it makes sense now. Oh, bollocks!
What?
Can you get me a cloth, please? Jess has brought me in a cup of tea, and yeah.
Can I just say that toast doesn't fit in our toaster, so I've had to toast half of it.
Oh, thank you very much. This is amazing. And a juice drink, which I have proceeded to spill all over me. Oh. The bread was still all right, yeah. Because I brought it on Tuesday.
I'm glad we're catching this moment of marital bliss on microphone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
How guilty are we feeling now, Chris?
Huh?
Carry on.
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said, how guilty are you feeling now about coaxing her into toast by talking about it really loudly on a podcast?
Oh, not worried at all, because here's a couple of things, Dan. One, I've got toast, so that overrides any sense of guilt. Two, the podcast is usually a higher quality than this, is it?
No, I didn't imply that at all.
I feel fine about it. I'm very grateful for the toast. Here's the thing, right? As a Matrix movie, Reloaded is better, without a shadow of a doubt. I think Reloaded is better.
No, as a movie, Chris. You put an extra word that you didn't need in there, Chris. As a movie, you meant.
I don't know, because for me, the second one, as I talked about, it just felt like cartoonish action scene, a lot of pretentious talking, cartoon action scene. And I think if there was more space between them, maybe I'd come to my senses and be like, the second one is better.
And that's probably how this comes. This second movie that's actually worth watching. Name an action scene in this movie that's worth watching. There's no decent thought-provoking anything in this one. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of stopping and talking in the previous movie, but there's also 3, maybe 4 of the best action sequences from the franchise. One after the fucking other. This is just a lot of CGI mechs shooting at other CGI robots. There's nothing in this movie, and the fight with Smith at the end is absolutely fucking horrible. It's horrible.
Oh yeah.
So tell me, what are you enjoying out of this? There's no.
I didn't mind the Zion sequence that much.
Which one?
The
Zion sequence. Where there's no main characters for fucking an hour.
Well, I do think one easy fix for this movie is you do something different and you get Morpheus back in enough time to get in the suit. Like, do you know what I mean? Maybe they don't need to be that far away, whatever it is. I think if you had Morpheus in the suit doing all of that, that would be so much better. Or even the fucking dude that we met, because I'm not mistaken, am I? We didn't meet the dude who's in the suit in the last movie, did we?
No,
or if we did, it was
very briefly.
Like, why's the other dude? Her ex-boy, Locke, I think his name is?
Yeah, he's like the council-y leader guy, isn't he? He's not going to be on the ground with the troops. He's like a general.
Fine. Or introduce this bit more. But to be honest with you, the answer is have Morpheus in it.
Yeah. That's the answer.
And I'll be honest, in my memory, I thought it was Morpheus in it.
But here's the other thing, Chris.
I was watching this.
So. You're not. If my memory serves, you're not a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Is that correct? You like them, but you don't love them. Am I fair?
I needed to give it a second chance. I watched it as a kid to impress a girl. and didn't really understand it, didn't really take a lot of it in, and I've never rewatched it. And I have actually for Christmas. Christmas sometimes people are like, "What do you want?" and you're slightly stretching for things. I was like, the Lord of the Ring box set, so I could rewatch it and give it another shot.
Right.
Although, as regular listeners of this podcast would show, I'm not traditionally a fan of like Game of Thrones and stuff. So
Sure.
Yeah, who knows? But so basically, not really. But I'm willing to give it a try, Dan.
Well, here's the thing. There's a battle in that called the Battle of Helm's Deep, right? And they do set up prior to the Battle of Helm's Deep, where through conversation, through visuals, you understand the geography of Helm's Deep. So there's walls. You know which parts of the place are vulnerable. You understand where all of your main characters are going to be during the fight. Then when the fight starts, the battle, they use big shots, big wide shots to give you the geography of the battle. Well, it's a battle of that scale to really make sure you understand the goals each time and the what's being defended and what's at stake. They do a lot of work in the movie, subtly and blended in, so you don't realise. It's not like the movie stops and Peter Jackson walks out in front of a green screen, starts pointing in and going, okay, so this wall here is really, like, they blend it in really nicely. And as a result, the battle is very satisfying. And it does have main characters in it, but honestly, they could have actually probably gotten away without the main characters because the rest of it's done so well. This is like watching a video game cutscene from a video game that I wasn't playing for 30 minutes. Because I don't recognise any of the fucking people, or I only half recognise them because they had 2 scenes in the previous movie. And I just couldn't give 2 shits. Couldn't give 2 shits about any of it. And then on top of that, they just keep going, we need to defend this thing, and then going over to it and doing that. Or we need to stop them at this gate. Do you? Okay. Why? And then they go over to that. I'm like, all right, I guess you need to stop them. It's like a movie where the guy keeps going, right now my job is to catch a bus, and then he catches the bus. And he goes, right now I need to get to work on time. And then the bus gets caught in traffic, and for a second you go, oh, maybe he won't. And he goes, I'm at work on time. It's like you can't just set up a goal and then achieve the goal, set up a goal, achieve. That's not storytelling. That's fucking nonsense. Again, it's just colours and noises. That entire section, take it out of the fucking movie if you're not going to do it properly. It's a waste of my time.
Well, the gap, because I'm sat there going, fucking hell, where's Neo?
Right.
Where are Neo in Trinity? Like, that really blew me. What blew me away most on this rewatch was, one, how big a gap it is where we just don't ever even bother cutting back to Neo and Trinity. Mm-hmm. And 2, how little they're in the Matrix in this film. It's like it just doesn't feel like a Matrix film. To answer your question, I kind of cared about his wife. I can't remember the character's name, but I sort of cared about his wife. I thought that was that. I'm glad they kept her around. I didn't mind the kid because I think I just kind of accepted the archetypes. Do you know what I mean?
Whose wife? The guy from the previous movie that used to be with Morpheus. Are we talking about Niobe, or are we talking about...
No.
Are we talking about Link's wife?
Link's wife.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I completely agree with everything you've just said. I didn't think the characters had any depth, but my brain in this sort of fluff piece of noises and bangs just went, well, he's the unconfident soldier, and she's waiting for her love to return, and I just kind of went with the stereotypes. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying the film did a good job.
Watch it than the last one, where we admitted that it was some of the best, action sequences. At least you could go, well, the action sequences are entertaining in the last one. Even if someone came to me and said, Matrix Reloaded, all of the philosophy bullshit, I don't get it. It's not for me. I don't understand. It's just over my head. I'd go, yeah, but the freeway chase, the fight in the chateau, the Merovingians' men. The Burley brawl with all the Smiths, there are so many incredible action sequences in that movie. There are none in this.
Because for me,
so what's left?
As I said yesterday, and a lot of it is about feeling, but for me, like I said, I had a bigger problem with the CGI holding up and the battles, I think.
That also breaks my brain, Chris, because I'm sorry, the Burley brawl uses some really dodgy CGI shots a couple of times. The entire last fight of this movie is the worst parts of the Burly Brawl.
I'm thinking specifically, and actually, I'd paused the movie when I sent that text, and then afterwards, so when I sent that text, basically it was as Neo. I paused it as Neo and Trinity came back and were going towards the thing. So, as I said earlier, I think the last fight is awful. Like, is really bad, and is probably worse than anything in Matrix Reloaded. But I guess I find boring less.
There's no probably, Chris. I'm not letting you get away with some of this language. No way. It's definitely worse than anything in Reloaded.
For me, I find the boringness a bit less egregious in terms of what I'd rather just kind of go, all right, fine, I'll fucking watch it again, than the cartoonish fights and the pretentiousness. I didn't. Some of the scenes with the talking in Reloaded really had me like, oh god. Whereas this, I was just a bit bored. But, you can let the colours and the noises wash over you. I don't have a great defence for it. A lot of it's just like... And also, I'm not entirely sure I'd have sent that text if I'd have got to the end of the film, because the last fight is awful. So I'm not saying it's a definite stance, but I'm saying I found some of it less egregious than I found some of Reloaded, I guess is what I'm saying. And also, again, let me be very clear... That's talking about it in general. In terms of the Matrix movies, it's by far the worst one, because it doesn't really feel like a Matrix movie.
Hi, everyone. We don't know what happened, but we had a technological snafu, and we just lost a chunk of the podcast. And it was such a blur of me being angry at the movie that I don't know what was said. So I'm going to try and summarise.
I think you were talking about. I think, and if we go from here, I think you've got room to cut in a bit earlier than it happened and whatever. Basically, you were talking about. You respected that the film did try and do something different at least.
Right. Yeah. So basically, I think that it's going to be so horrible to remake my points. It's like, it's the nightmare. This is the nightmare. This is the thing that when we're recording, we fear the most having to do, which is like, we make a point. I feel really, happy with how the point came across. And now nothing I say, I'm going to keep going, probably made that point better the first time. That's all that's going to be going through my head for the next 10 minutes. So I just want the listeners to know that's what's going on.
But the thing is, Dan, we'll never know.
No, that is the problem. We'll literally never know. It might have been worse. This might be better. You never, I'm going to work under that assumption, Chris. This is going to be better. That's what we're going to work under. So, a lot of people, I think, are going to give us not shit, but I think I think the criticism we might receive on this is that maybe we're not respecting that they tried to do something different with this movie. Because Chris, I think the thought that had said that was Chris had sort of said, well, it doesn't feel like a Matrix movie, which is true. That is 100% true. But I think what my point was in response to that, and I'll stop referring to it in my thoughts as past tense after this one, was that I respect any filmmaker that wants to do something different. We had two movies that were primarily in the Matrix, set within the actual Matrix itself. So a third movie not particularly set primarily in the Matrix, sort of more of a war movie, a different tone. I think that's fine, because it's the same thing Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi. Like, he wanted to subvert the typical, because why would you just make another Star Wars movie? We have a Star Wars movie. We have several Star Wars movies that have been Star Wars movies. Like, why can't we do something different within the Star Wars universe? And when I say that, I mean, I'm talking about, like, Force Awakens being sort of a copy of New Hope. So when they come to Reloaded and Revolutions, they didn't just want to redo The Matrix. They'd made The Matrix already. That movie exists and is very good, by all accounts. So I really respect that they sat down and went, well, let's do something different. We'll use the first of our sequels to subvert the expectations of the audience, whether Neo's the one, how simple it was to beat the machines, and we've made that part of the machine's plan to subjugate them. Then, with the third one, we'll step outside of the Matrix and we'll actually do almost like a gritty war movie. Like, that as a in principle is fine. But I guess what I would say was, I don't think my criticism of this movie comes down to it being different. There are plenty of ways to have made this movie work. Where it fails, if I'm doing sort of a broad summary of where I don't like what this movie does, is that it fails to engage me in any of the action at all. I think all of it is bad, which I think that part we did get on record. And I think that the actual storytelling is severely broken. I genuinely feel like they don't pay off anything from the previous movie, and then this movie in itself doesn't have a goal or direction or narrative structure that makes any sense whatsoever. Morpheus is barely in this movie, and when he is, his character arc that was in the previous movie is just forgotten. He's just not had his whole world shattered. He still believes. They should have made it, okay, I'm choosing to not believe in the prophecy anymore, but the arc being him realizing that he believes in Neo. Instead, they gave that to Niobe, which is weird because that line would have made a lot more sense coming out of Morpheus's mouth at that point in the movie, but whatever, fine. But it also, on itself, so at least Reloaded had a narrative structure of Neo needs to get to the source to end the war. He gets to the source and has the rug pulled out from him. That's actually not the end of his journey. There's an arc there where he has a goal and then obstacles. This movie, it's sort of like they just sort of float about and don't make a lot of choices for themselves. It's one criticism actually of Reloaded that came to me after we watched, after we recorded, which the final part of that last movie was shock horror. Your choices were actually part of the machine system. But the problem with that is they didn't make a lot of choices in that movie. Actually, they were very much on the ride. The Oracle told them what they needed to do, where they needed to go. And at least in this one, Neo is the one that goes, I need to go somewhere. But other than that, there are just no goals in this movie other than the machines are coming. That's it. And that's all this movie is. And it's then, and structurally, I want to say now, by the way, I can now say with confidence that I have done this worse than I did at the original time.
Whereas if we don't have, as a result of having to edit around it, if we don't have me trying to defend why I would rewatch this one over Reloaded, it was very eloquent. It was beautiful. I won't even try and redo it, but it was. You'd have been won over. You'd have been watching Revolutions right now, guys, if you'd have heard that shit.
I think that bit's alright. I think we got that bit. So.
I know. I completely agree, and I think another bit I've said before, but I'll say again just because it's cleaner, is it doesn't live up to the promises. Basically, right. You end your first movie with Neo becoming Superman. You want to see Superman win the day in a way that's not a big rainy CGI fight, and fundamentally. The problem is solved by the machines. Neo allows himself to be taken over by Smith, and then the machines go in and destroy Smith and wipe out all the Smiths. Yeah. Now, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in the notion of Smith becomes a bit more human, Neo becomes a bit more machine. I would suspect if I looked, there's all sorts of fucking books and articles and philosophy on that, and it is an interesting idea, but they don't do anything with it. So, I don't think whilst it's an interesting idea, because they don't do anything with it, I don't think it should come at the expense of the promised setups, which are Morpheus saying, okay, I don't believe in the one, I believe in you, Neo, you, Thomas Anderson, and Neo being Superman and saving everyone, which you can argue he does, but he doesn't literally save everyone.
Yeah, I mean... In terms of the Smith thing, I actually think that as an ending in principle is very clever. I think because I think you described it in last one. It's exactly right. Neo, basically, they set up that any program that goes to the source is deleted, but Smith ain't going to the source. He's got free will now. He's choosing not to go to the source. Which, by the way, seems like a big flaw in your system. If your programs can choose whether to be deleted or not, then it feels like you're going to get a lot of leftover werewolves and ghosts, which is what happens from a really weird gothic version of the Matrix. Did you know that was the backstory for the Merovingian and his goons?
No.
So the backstory, very quickly, just for the Merovingian and his goons, is he was from the second version of the Matrix, where instead of trying to make a utopia, because the first one was a utopia, the audience rejected it, They didn't believe it because the world is suffering and a true utopia wouldn't keep them content, which I think is a funny idea. So then they went the exact opposite way and made a nightmare world. And from that nightmare world, that's where the Merovingian came in. He helped the architect design that one. And he has a real whole gothic thing. And that's why all of his henchmen are supposed to be werewolves, ghosts, and vampires. Because she uses silver bullets to kill them in the previous movie, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And obviously the two twins were ghosts. And then the guys that Neo fights are supposed to be vampires, in the chateau. Yeah. Anyway, so they're just hangovers from like a weird nightmare version of the Matrix. I found that out in the research for this and was like, they could have explored that some more because that's a really cool idea.
Well, was it explored more in supplementary material?
Maybe, yeah, because people know that, so that must be somewhere. Yeah, that's a fair point. Maybe it was. Either way, it would have been cool to explore that in one of the movies, because I think that's actually a really neat idea. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, completely. Well, also, then they become, less faceless villains, which is kind of what they are now.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, that this premise that they set up, and this is what, the one thing I like about the ending is it's one of the few things in this movie that actually is a payoff to a thing they previously established. So it's very clear, if the machine goes to the source deletes it. If the machine chooses not to go to the source, and by machine, sorry, I mean program, sorry. If the program chooses not to go to the source, then it's just in the Matrix. Now, Smith has these extra powers and is slowly taking over the Matrix, killing people by taking them over. Eventually, he's going to hurt the machine's source of power. So the machines want him gone, the humans want him gone, and the idea of this linking them all together and giving them a common enemy, which is exactly what the last movie set up, which is all this idea of like they should be working together. I think that's all very clever. So what happens is Neo plugs into the Matrix from the source and then allows himself to be taken over by Smith, which connects Smith to the source and allows the source to delete him. Brilliant. Yeah. As a concept. It has two flaws, though. One, why doesn't Neo just immediately approach Smith and let him get him?
Yeah.
We know what Smith wants. What's the point of the big fight?
Because then we wouldn't get the big old fight, Dan.
Right, yeah, okay. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is it sort of... it doesn't clash. It creates, I think, an intentional contradiction. So, Neo agrees that it's inevitable he was going to take over by Smith. Because in the previous movie, Smith says, me taking you over is inevitable. And in this movie, right before Smith does that, Neo says, you were right, Smith, it is inevitable. And then Smith takes him over, which leads to Smith's destruction. I think it's a reasonably good payoff. It's that ending is one of the few things that's paying off stuff from previous movies in this movie, in my opinion. But, don't know, about 4 minutes earlier, Smith says, why do you keep fighting? And Neo says, because I choose to. Now, the whole philosophy of these movies has been about choice, free will, versus determinism. Do you have choice, or are all of the circumstances and your upbringing determining your choices essentially before you make them? So I think the point of the ending of this movie is maybe it's both to a degree, because Neo both says he fights because he chooses to, but also that the outcome is inevitable. Within 3 minutes of each other. So I think the intent is to basically for them to say it's a paradox. It's an admission that society can ask all the questions we want about free will and determinism, but we don't have an answer. But from a story perspective, while that's a very interesting moral quandary, philosophical quandary, whatever you want to call it, for your movie, from a story perspective, it's not particularly satisfying. Because it does feel like an inherent contradiction, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people who've studied like A-level, philosophy or whatever, who are going to get in going to slide into my DMs to call me a prick and say I've got this wrong or whatever. But I just think, although I've misread it or whatever, I don't know, maybe, but I just don't think that's satisfying. I don't. I think it's clever, and I think it's again one of the best parts of this movie because it actually is a payoff for something from the previous ones. So that ending does all come together in a really clever way, but it has two quite severe flaws for me.
Well, I think all the ideas are clever in a way. They just need to be done slightly differently. Like you said earlier, the idea of right, okay, we've subverted in the second film, and also, and I know I struggled with it because of the cartoony element, and I couldn't quite get over some of the CGI, which is unfair. I hold my hands up and admit that, but. Fair play to Reloaded for being like, you want Matrix stuff? All right, we're going to do all the Matrix stuff. We're going to see what a car chase looks like in the Matrix. We're going to see what the ultimate brawl looks like in the Matrix. We're going to see Neo fly around and be Superman. Like, we're going to do all the Matrix stuff in part 2, and in part 3, it's real world, gritty. Like, the pitch of the way, you I think even earlier described this film, which is a gritty war film, that as a pitch is interesting and is different and is a clever idea. But the silo whatever they're called becomes so faceless. Like there's not a lot of point in a Sentinel army if the Sentinels are going to form one big monster, because then you're just watching a monster movie. Like, it's really, the rules are really odd. Like, the way some walls they can get through in minutes, and others, like, seemingly where people just, like, turn the handle of a door. Like, and these robots are kept out for, like, 30 minutes. There's just a lot of strange execution. I don't know if the Neo ideas. Well, I suppose the blind thing is an interesting idea, and him facing off with Smith in the real world is interesting. The problem with the Neo storyline is it's literally like 3 plot points, and they don't. There's not enough character stuff to follow through.
There's no plot points in any of the other stuff. It's just a series.
Because even actually,
go here, do this.
That's another thing. That's another thing that could have been a clever idea. Maybe instead of just going up to Smith and going, right, okay, take me, and then the Source takes out Smith, maybe the reason he didn't do that is because he's got so much anguish from Trinity's death that he just wants to punch the shit out of something, and he decides to blame Smith, and he wants a fight. But that idea, you know what I mean? There's clever stuff in this film, but none of it is executed in a way that then comes across as clever. It comes across as cluttered.
Because the first, 40 minutes of this movie or whatever is Neo stuck in a fucking boring train station and nothing's happening for anyone or anything. Multiple trips to the Oracle that don't go anywhere. See, this is the thing. In the last movie, you criticize like the stopping to talk. At least in that movie, the stopping to talk gave me information about the movie's philosophical perspective, what the characters think. These are just the most arbitrary conversations. They just are absolutely pointless. They're just either repeating stuff from they're either repeating stuff from the previous movies, or they're just expository nonsense.
And to clarify, I didn't mind the action stopping. It's not that. It just felt so rhythmic. It just felt so big action sequence, pretentious conversation, big action sequence, pretentious conversation, just to kind of clarify that.
But at least the movie had an arc, though, and a thrust overall.
I was amazed in terms of the what's happening and the philosophy. I was amazed how unconfused I was watching it this time. Because I think the reason for my confusion as a kid was because I was still confused about Reloaded, and I was hoping this would clarify, and it doesn't. But what I was amazed about on this rewatch is there's nothing to be confused about. Because it's so, like you say, there's some philosophy stuff at the end, but otherwise, it's literally beginning bit, Zion thing, which is 26 minutes, 58 seconds without seeing Neo, and then Neo at the end. Like, it literally just is those bits.
It's a small sequence in the Matrix to rescue Neo that has barely any action, certainly no really standout action, followed by a lot of repetitive talking that doesn't really add anything to anything. Then they've got Neo. He talks to the Oracle for no reason. We get nothing out of that scene. Then they're back in Zion, not in Zion, but in the real world, and Neo makes his decision about going to the source because he's concocted his plan. He understands Smith is the problem now, and I guess maybe he figures that out after his conversation with the Oracle. But if the whole point of this is now Neo's choosing, if the point of the last movie was people keep choosing for Neo and now he's choosing for himself, don't have him figure it out through a conversation with the Oracle.
Yeah, I think
because
it's
that hurts
slightly,
that idea.
But it's the seeds of it. I think it is partly inspired by the Oracle, but also the seeds of it come earlier when he's trying to think of a way out of the train station, he pitches the machine city. So I think he's mulling that over from the beginning.
But she's the one who says that there's a bigger problem, and he says Smith, and she's like, yeah, like so that the Smith of it all seems to occur to him. You know, the idea for
fair.
using Smith as the bargaining chip. Also, gotta say, and I know they try to cover this at the end of the movie with the architect when she says, you know, of course I'll keep my promise, I'm not a human. Like, oh, machines always, you know, if they make a deal, they stick to it. They're not like humans. But I'm sorry, once Neo's destroyed Smith, there's no incentive for the machines to actually keep up their end of the bargain. At all.
Yeah.
There's nothing keeping them in place.
Well, unless they're worried the Oracle will do it again. I don't know. Like, she could start the cycle with another one, maybe.
Well, the only person who could do that would be the architect. He'd reset the Matrix and there'd be another one born eventually. But
yeah,
he seems in line. So there's literally no incentive for the machines to not just continue decimating Zion. Neo's gone, you know, into the source, presumably, and he probably, you know, based on the fact there's a fourth one coming, he's somewhere in the system as a digital consciousness. But his physical body seems very much done and dead. You know, there's no one to stop them. Why? Smith's gone. They've got their end of the bargain. That's like doing a drug deal, giving the drug dealer the money first, and then being like, in your own time. The drug dealer's gonna be like, cool, bye. You know what I mean? Like it's
we'll do a bit of guesswork. We'll do a bit of guesswork at the end, but I would suspect they resurrect him. There's a shot, But anyway.
I know what show you're talking about. I know what show you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's called Matrix Resurrections.
To play the movie a compliment, Dan. While we're talking,
good luck
about Bane. Ian Bliss is fantastic.
Yes, he is.
Like right. So he's so fantastic that the fact that Neo isn't right away like, well, you're Agent Smith, especially as he spends the scene calling him Mr. Anderson, is madness to me. Ian Bliss is probably given the best performance in the entire film because you really believe he's Smith. He's got Hugo. It's just an incredible Hugo Weaving. Like,
yeah,
it's really, really good.
To the Wachowskis' credit, they cast him for that reason. They literally, because he had such a good impression of his Smith voice, that's the reason he got the job. But it's not luck that they hired an actor to play Bane and then he turned out to be able to do a Smith voice.
No, of course not. Yeah, it's great casting, great acting, etc.
Yeah. But yeah, it is incredible. It is genuinely one of the best performances in the entire movie because Hugo Weaving is a very particular. Put it this way: I originally wanted to start this podcast by being like, Mr. Billingham, we've missed you, and do a whole. And then I thought, no, because you can't recreate how he says it. You're not able to. It doesn't work, basically, because Hugo Weaving has such a specific delivery. Trying to mimic it is always going to sound shit. Was my point.
Yeah.
And the fact this guy can do it is incredible. What did you say his name was? Ian something. Ian Bliss.
Ian Bliss.
Yeah, I looked him up also. He's somewhere in my notes for later on, but since you brought it up, absolutely, he's incredible.
Yeah, I think he's brilliant.
But they don't do anything with that either. Do you want to talk about plots they don't do anything with? So we've got more at the end of the last movie, the Nebuchadnezzar's gone, Morpheus' entire faith is gone, and we've got Smith in the real world. Do any of those plots come to anything?
No.
Oh, we've got Neo with powers in the real world. Does that do anything? Do they do anything with that in this movie as well?
No, I don't even like their explanation of it either.
No. Basically, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the explanation is Neo can sort of Wi-Fi now. He's Wi-Fi'd his way into the Matrix.
The explanation appears to be Smith's getting stronger, so you have to get stronger too. Well, how do they get... what?
Yeah.
What, so I'm sort of going, real?
Okay, so yeah, my fansplanation, and it's not what they say in the movie, is that Weo, a new character called Weo, a new character called Weo. Oh dear. So Neo, I think, kind of Wi-Fi's his way into the Matrix from the real world with his mind. That's what
we talked about last time. Yeah.
So because he can get into the Matrix without physically being plugged in, he can disable the machines. But doing that trapped him in that weird limbo place. That's kind of my fansplanation of it. But yeah, you're right. The explanation they give in the movie is just you're more powerful now. Your powers work outside of the Matrix. Okay, cool. Thanks, movie.
Which means his powers become like a weird, like it kind of becomes Star Wars. It becomes like the Force, like. Mm-hmm. It's the explanation of what you just talked about and what we talked about last time, the notion that there's a link between him and the machines because he's, as a program, he's got that powerful, makes way more sense. Or at least is in the parameters of the rules of the universe, which the film sets up. But Ian Bliss, great performance. But yeah, you're right, they don't do anything with that. They don't really... they just don't do anything with Niobe and Morpheus, like this is
why I can't believe you'd rather watch this one than the last one, because I'm just going like, this movie does nothing it's supposed to do. Not supposed to, forget supposed to. This movie does nothing a movie does. This isn't a movie. This is just, honestly, it's colours and noises. It's a 2-hour distraction, and a poor one at that.
It's all, well, again, in case this isn't on air, I sent that text before the final fight, which I really don't like. It's shorter as well. It's got that going for it.
10 minutes?
No, not by much. It felt quicker to me. Like I said, we need to retread. We've already discussed why I would rather rewatch this one. And again, that isn't me going, this film's great. That's me going, neither are great. If I had the choice, I find this more egregious than this. The reason I keep going back to that, I guess, is because it seems at odds with your review of Reloaded. Because when we sat and we reviewed Reloaded, we pointed out so many things that we thought were good about it or interesting about it, and this one, there's almost nothing to like. But again, the scenario is like, if I have to rewatch it tomorrow, do you know what I mean? It's not so, yes, whilst those things are good, I don't necessarily. I don't know. It's a throwaway thing I said halfway through the movie.
Let's. I find this movie dull. I genuinely find this movie really dull. I suspect the reason for me that this movie was so dull is because one of the biggest set pieces in the whole movie is characters we don't know or care about. We talked about, and I don't know if it got cut, but we talked about how that would have been fixed quite easily by just throwing Morpheus into the mix. But I also
is the biggest obvious fix. Yeah. I don't know why no one in the writers' room did that. I don't know why no one said, hold on, instead of having Morpheus be co-pilot. Oh, and don't get me wrong, the Niobe stuff is great. It's cool to see her kicking ass.
Niobe gets more to do in this movie than Morpheus.
Yeah, exactly. And Morpheus is the character we've been with since the beginning. And Morpheus being the only one that lives, logically, maybe that's why they didn't do this, subvert expectation. But Morpheus was the obvious one to die. Die for the cause, finally choosing to believe in the cause so much and believe in Neo so much that he died for him, maybe. I just think why did no one go, would this not be more powerful if Morpheus was in the middle of it? Because then we've got an actual character that we know, care about, etc.
I'll be honest with you. I think about the 3 sections of this movie, and I don't care about any of them. Like, it's so that one is the most egregious, because it's literally already in a movie that has failed to invest me in anything. Now just taking me out of even the characters that I have investment, that the goodwill you got from the previous movies with at least having characters I know and care about is gone. Because there's just no one. It's like, oh great, it's Link's wife, who's had 2 scenes in the previous movie. Cool, And
that kid who no one believes in, Dan.
Yep. And that
gruff,
that gruff general who the gruff general who learns to respect the young buck that he didn't trust and believe in at the beginning of the movie. It's very good. It's great. It's real good. Anyway, so for me though, I go like, okay, well that one I can understand. I can pin a reason why I'm not invested in that, because it's that probably that and the lack of stakes. Other than the city might get destroyed, it's just very unclear what's going on. We've already talked about it. Put that in a box for a second. But the opening sequence of the movie is, will we get Neo out of this train station? Well, yeah. One, if you've seen the trailer, he must get out at some point because he fights Smith. So there's no stakes there. But also, trapping him there just feels like a way to give the opening of the movie something to do that's in the Matrix, so that people couldn't complain there's no Matrix stuff, but they do it half-heartedly and without any real investment, and the fights are all sort of half fights, and nothing ever really escalates to the point of being interesting. And
I quite liked. I just wish they did more of it. Occasionally, in the scene where they fight in the entrance to the club, some of the shots, some of the characters are upside down, and some of the shots, like, it starts reversing perspective.
Yes.
So, like, we see Morpheus upside down because it's from the perspective of the dude that's upside down. I really liked that. I wish they'd done more of it, but I was like, that felt visually more interesting to me than the brawl, for example, in Reloaded. Like, I was like, oh, that's unique and interesting, but they didn't do enough of it.
Well, that's the problem, isn't
Again,
it? It's like,
good idea, not fully explored.
A sprinkling of good ideas here and there is becoming a trademark of these movies. Sprinkling of good ideas that they don't do anything with is becoming a trademark of these movies. But that whole section just feels pointless, because it doesn't do it. Nothing happens in that part of the movie that affects anything that follows. And then you've got the Zion fight, and then you've got the last sequence of the movie, which, as I've said, has a slightly the opposite problem, in that it actually does have relevance to everything that's come before it. I've already talked about, the Neo and Smith of it all, and how it explores the idea of determinism versus free will. But they undercut the entire sequence because the fight doesn't need to happen because of the way it's set up. Neo just needs to be absorbed by Smith. So they don't give that any context or weight or meaning. So that section of the movie feels meaningless and pointless. And on top of that, it's probably the worst fight in the entire franchise.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec. And it's a shame because, as we've previously discussed, like with the Morpheus situation, there's an easy win. Just make it rage-fueled. Trinity's dead. I'm going to fucking go nuts.
Yes. Well, we need to talk about that too, because that just plays comical. We'll come back to Trinity's death. Yeah,
so the fight is just, I don't know who thought, like... Right, okay, so in the second film, right, there's a shitload of them, yeah, and they all run and attack him. Oh, right, okay, right, yeah. At one point, he gets a, lamp and he uses it like a cotton bud. Oh, okay, that's a bit weird, but all right, fine, yeah, we'll go with it. Yeah, cool. How do we top it in the third film? Right, okay, here we go. Yeah, you ready? You ready? Yeah. In the third film, there's a fuck ton of them. There's more, in fact. He's taking over the whole fucking Matrix. Yeah. What happens? They all watch. What? They all watch him. Okay. So it's just those two fighting. Yeah. Except it's different to the first film. How? Right. You can't really see anything because it's raining. Right. And sometimes they go in the sky. What? Sometimes they fight and it's exactly the same fighting, but it's in the sky. And has the rain stopped? Nope. Oh, so it's still raining? Yeah. So... does it visually, if it's raining, does it visually look different? It's in the sky. No. I get that, Derek. But why? Do you know what I mean? Just madness.
It's bad. I think you really nailed it with the. But this time we can barely see it, because that is a big part of the problem. There are so many problems with this fight scene. First of all, when they're just floating about punching each other, because they're clearly on these big rigs that spin them round in the air. They can't have a full choreographed fight scene like you do when you're grounded. So it's just you punch, I punch, you punch, I punch, which isn't very interesting to look at. The rain makes everything feel muddy. A lot of it, when it's not that, is weird, weightless, horrible CGI. So the things I didn't like about the Burly Brawl, I think the Burly Brawl is great when they're just actors with a bit of string work, physically doing, choreographed combat.
Yeah.
I think the Burly Brawl has some of the best fight choreography that this franchise has. It is marred by 2 or 3 shots that are almost entirely CGI, where everything looks weird and floaty and wrong. We talked about that with the previous one. But this is that, where the ratio is the other way around. There's 1 or 2 shots of real people fighting, and the rest of it feels to be a lot of very heavily CGI'd shots. The only part of that final fight I think is okay is when they burst into the building, and there's a big blue window behind them with like a light source, and they're sort of silhouetted in front of it, and there's all rain dripping off the window on the outside, but it's not affecting them. It looks fucking incredible, but it lasts for, I want to say, about 30 seconds. And it's the best bit of fighting in this movie. But it does not last long enough at all. And it's so cool to see them all silhouetted as they fight, but it's just, it gets 30 seconds, and then Smith pushes him back out into the rain and sky. And what's really depressing about this is, Chris, it's made me lose all hope ever for a decent Dragon Ball Z movie, because it is the closest I've ever seen to an on-screen representation of a Dragon Ball Z fight, and it looks terrible. Makes me worry I'll never be able to get a good Dragon Ball Z movie.
But Dan,
yep.
I don't have anything to say on that because I'm not as familiar with Dragon Ball Z, but it sounds like you're right. But I will say this, Dan.
Yep.
For all the times you sat there as a kid and thought, I'd really love to see someone get punched in the face really slowly and like a punch mark stay in the skin and hold on that. That's going to look cool. Got to see that, didn't you? They really... And that shot, I remember vividly, like, artwork for that shot was on the DVD cover. So that's something that they loved. Do other people think it looks cool? It doesn't look cool, right? You don't think that looks cool? I was just like, all right, cool. This is weird.
Yeah.
It's
bad.
Just odd, man.
So bad.
There's a lot of strange choices in this film.
So many. I just don't even know where to begin with, like, how wrong this is, and how broken this is, and how many of these choices are the wrong choices. And again, I think the initial setup of, like, let's do something different is fine. I want to make it very clear, and I said this when I said it the first time. You're going to hear me say this a few times for this, because I feel like it's a criticism we might get unfairly. I'm not saying the choice to do this differently is the problem. I'm saying the execution that follows that is the problem. There are no clear stakes. It's a collection of seemingly unconnected scenes that don't pay off anything from the previous movie. The action isn't particularly good. The visuals aren't particularly good. I think a lot of the CGI is shocking. But that's, you could say that's of the time, but I don't think the blending of humans into CGI is particularly good. And there are movies from around this era where that was better. I think the lack of practical combat in this one hurts it more than the previous two. From a story perspective, it just meanders around for an hour and a half and then has some stuff relevant to everything before it. It's just, I can't imagine a movie failing more thoroughly to not conclude anything or be a movie. Just actually be a piece of narrative. Like, it's so baffling, the choices. in terms of the execution. I don't even know where to start. If you feel like we're rambling in this podcast, it's because actually trying to pinpoint what's wrong with this movie is impossible, because it's everything. It's almost everything.
I think you don't have to, because we said multiple times as well that a lot of the ideas are clever. So I think we've definitely made the point that like it's not that they tried something different. It's just that different and those clever ideas that are part of that different aren't executed well at all. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Trinity Death.
Oh, Trinity's death. Yeah.
It's played. It's accidentally played comical. They're having a chat. He doesn't realize that she's. It's like sort of from a shit sitcom or like a Rick and Morty episode. It's like they're having a chat and then the camera cuts to a wider shot and she's got like 1,000 things sticking through her. And then she talks forever. And it's like a Family Guy joke where a character's on his deathbed and he goes like, and then one more thing, Peter, and it's like, ha ha ha, he's still got something to say, even though he's clearly gonna die, and it's like, and one more thing, it just keeps going and going and going to the point where you're actually laughing while she's trying to have a really emotional moment, because it's just insane that she's still talking. Yeah. It's, honestly, like, I laughed when they revealed the injuries, and I laughed increasingly as she spoke. And it's supposed to be this really poignant, emotional death, and they executed that badly too. And that's like, and again, we have so much respect for Lana and Lily, both of us. I don't want to speak for Chris, but I'm sure that's true. And what they've achieved, particularly with the first one, and even the second one has a bunch of stuff I love in it. How do you get a death wrong? That's movie making 101. Every movie has not every movie, but so many movies that you just copy one that works at least. Like,
so what doesn't work? The fact that she talks for so long,
everything, the shot choices,
really
this comical, the comical idea that he doesn't realise that she's injured, and you have her talking for ages, and then cut back to reveal she's horribly wounded. The amount of time that it takes on either end of that are bad. The actual shot choices are broken. Like, just the way they pull it back again. Like, let the audience know she's deeply injured, and have the emotion of the scene be Neo slowly realising she's dying. Don't try to trick the audience too.
Also, Dan.
Yeah.
Why does she die?
They crash, don't they?
Does she? No. But thematically, narratively, why? Presumably, maybe you could make an argument. Well, she dies so that Neo's got nothing left to lose, so then he allows himself to be taken over. But is Neo's sacrifice not more powerful?
Correct.
If we have Trinity watch it, if we have Trinity watching it happen and screaming as it happens, would it not be clearer that he died for one? Is it not more powerful if he somehow manages to talk to her and she says, I know you don't want to do this, but you need to do this? Is it not more kick-ass if after it happens, maybe the machines stick to their end of the bargain because Trinity walks over Neo's body and says, let's arrange a truce? Or do you know what I mean? And she's the one in charge of brokering this peace because she's the one left. Like, I don't know. Is that not more?
Things you could have done that might be more powerful. I think the intention, and I agree with you that it doesn't work. The intention is to take Trinity out of the equation, so that
that's what I said. So
that his choice is purer, I guess, because Trinity muddled his choices in the previous movie.
That's absolutely
out in a video. I can't remember who it was, but. Because it's been so long since I've seen it, because I've been very intentionally avoiding anything Matrix. The Weekly Planet guys just reviewed these 3 movies, and I've been dying to watch them. I can't wait to finish this today so I can watch their reviews, but I didn't want their thoughts to be a part of my thoughts. But there was a video I watched ages ago where they said something about, like, if you look at the Reloaded, there are multiple times where they show Neo choosing the needs of the wider world over Trinity before the ending, where he then goes the other way. because so there's he wants to spend time with her, but all those people show up and she's like it's okay, and he sort of stays there. And then there's another one as well somewhere in the movie where he's forced to choose between the needs of Zion and Trinity, and chooses the people and the wider problem. And then obviously at the end of the movie he's forced to choose between following his path as the one to the source and resetting the Matrix, or Trinity, and he chooses to save Trinity. So I think the notion was, if we kill Trinity, we now know his choice is like a pure like for the people, But I think the intention is the decision he makes when he allows her to come with him is him accepting her fate and accepting that she may die for the greater good. That's the notion. But I agree with you. It's muddled, unclear, and then when she does die, you do kind of go, for what reason?
Yeah, it doesn't, unfortunately, I think all of those things you just said are right, but it feels more like someone in the room went, but if she's still alive, he might not allow himself to be taken over by Smith. Oh yeah, all right, we better kill her then. Like,
right, yeah, there is a cynical, less positive read of it, for sure.
Yeah. So, any other notes?
Yeah, Trinity gets to use her bicycle kick again. We established in the trivia for the last movie it took her 6 months to learn, so they got her to do it again in this one. Thought that was good. I wrote down, stop putting artificial obstacles into the story to get in the way. I guess it's early in my notes, so I guess that's when they were like, trapped Neo and were on the quest to save Neo that took them back to the Merovingian for no reason whatsoever.
But also, I meant to say actually on that, the conclusion of that was so shit. Like, basically, they were like, look, we'll kill you. And he went, all right then. Like, what? And then he doesn't appear again, hunting for revenge. Like, sorry, what? I did enjoy Carrie Ann Moss's delivery of, I don't have time for this shit, but it was just bollocks, really, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Agreed, 100%. I've written here, well, this is early in my notes, so I clearly was not on board with this movie from an early point. Or maybe I added this to the front of my notes to make sure it was one of the first things I said, I don't know. But it says, well, the good news is, it's not bogged down with all the impenetrable, distracting nonsense from the last movie. The bad news is, instead of being full of good ideas and great fights, it's dumb as fuck, devoid of good ideas, and deeply boring. Thanks, Past Dan. Well, that's a good way to summarise what I've just spent an hour or two talking about. This whole thing could have been a lot shorter if you'd have just... What's that, sorry?
I was going to say, yeah, this whole thing could have been a lot shorter if you'd have just read that out.
Yeah. I do... one thing I do like... I wrote the note about this. I like the implication, because I never realised that this is what it was. The explanation they give for the Oracle looking different, because as we talked about last week, the original actress passed away very sadly, and a different actress took the role in this. And obviously, with the Matrix movies, you can actually acknowledge a recasting, because it's a big science fiction movie where everyone's like shells or whatever. So, the implication in this, which I don't think I ever picked up on before, is that the Merovingian did something to destroy the Oracle's old shell as revenge for her sending Neo after the Keymaker in the previous movie. I'd never picked up on that before, and I thought that was cool.
And I like that idea a lot. And I think she as well does a fantastic job. Like, it's a really hard ask to follow that performance, but she doesn't do it quite the same, but still has a lot of levity to it.
She has the same warmth. I think she's captured the warmth that the character had in the previous movie, I think, without actually copying the performance.
Yeah, definitely. But you've given us a good explanation. You've made it clear. Stop repeating it. The amount of references, it really felt like they were trying to go, it's different face, but we got a reason, guys. Like, look at us, we've written a reasoning. That's pretty clever, isn't it? Like, they just kept repeating that point, and it's like, you've done this, you've explained it. That's cool.
Well, it's because different characters go to meet her at different times, and the other characters don't know and have to have it explained. It's like, that's their reasoning that happens, but it's because there's just so much pointless back and forth, so much flab at the beginning of this movie where it's like, we go to see the Oracle, she tells us this, we go to here, we come back to see the Oracle with this person. It's just, ugh. Get rid of it.
Another really decent idea, not really explored, the notion of programs behaving more human and falling in love and having little program babies. Really interesting notion. Literally just there to be interesting. Just there to make you go, oh, that's quite cool. Like, I'm even still a little bit confused. So, the train station's between the real world and the Matrix. So
No.
the programs...
The train station is between the Matrix and the Source.
Right, okay, yeah, right, got you.
So you go through the train station to get to the Source where you're going to be deleted.
So where did the programs fall in love and have the baby? At the Source?
No, in the Matrix, but they have to go back to the Source now. But
they didn't. They went back to the Matrix.
The Oracle has agreed to look after the kid.
In this, yeah, but where are they? So they're sending the girl back to the.
Yeah, the girl's going back to the Matrix. They're going to the Source.
Well, why do they get on the same fucking train then, Dan?
I don't know, because it's only got one track. It must go there and come back, I guess.
It's confusing.
Look, I don't think it's particularly. I don't think it's particularly clear. Just I think they do that to protect the daughter, though. I think that's the implication. I'd have to rewatch it.
Right,
I don't know. There's a lot of pointless shite about characters that I didn't know or care about before this movie started, and then they don't do anything with them in this movie because why would they?
Yeah. That I think is one of the most egregious ones though, because it's literally just there to be, because they don't really do anything with it. There's probably some thematic link you could find.
Oh, sure.
And I think
it's supposed to be teaching us something about programs and about individuality with the machines and their ability to make choices.
I think the movie is essentially about the lines between what makes a human human and what makes a program merging, and humans being more like machines being more like humans. That is about that, but I do something with it instead of it just being one scene at the beginning and then just keep having the girl throughout, who then from that point onwards isn't representing that. She's a cute young girl for the Oracle to talk to, basically. Yeah. But another good idea, just, again, the execution of it isn't amazing.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, having... And we've already talked about why I think the ending is actually reasonably clever in terms of, like, Neo making the deal with the machines. Hey, Smith is going to end both of us if we don't come to some sort of agreement here. So he ends the war
clever idea,
through to it. That's perfect. But I will say it is also slightly weirdly muddled because obviously the movies have generally speaking been about them fighting the machines, and it becomes about Smith being the real threat. So it's, I don't know if that's just execution, make it clearer. Because it just feel a bit not confused but muddled in terms of never the clarity of who the antagonist is shifts quite a lot through particularly this movie, and because I don't think I got that as a kid. I don't think I got as a kid that actually Neo was fighting, on behalf of the Matrix as well. I don't think I understood that. Right. The bargaining of it, because literally all it is what do you want? Peace. And I think it washed over me what that meant as a kid. As with everything in this movie, not made clear enough.
No, because you kind of want it less expositional in the dialogue than this, but you essentially want, I'll do you a deal. I'll get rid of Smith if you keep Zion safe. Because that makes the end even more confusing, because you're like, wait, what? So it's a new one, but now humans are free to go? But what if they don't know about the Matrix?
Right.
Weird.
Yeah, it's not very clear. And I don't mind the fate of the thing being a little unclear. I don't need to see the world rebuilding or whatever. That's that's a big ask. I'm happy with a hint at it, but also I think it's just really. Why do we not end on Morpheus?
Yeah, I know.
He's the only surviving character. We end on the Oracle and the Architect having a chat. End on Morpheus.
Worse than that, mate. Morpheus gets his in Reloaded. Morpheus gets the Zion will survive, Zion will fight speech. But Morpheus doesn't get to be the one to tell the crowd that they have won. And again, it's a good idea, the kid doing it, but we're not connected to the kid as much. It's not full circle. It's not Morpheus's "I was right" moment. Like, Morpheus doesn't get there. For anyone that doubted me, this is Neo. I was right all along. Fuck you. Like, surely we want that moment.
Is the last thing we see of Morpheus that moment where the machines are at the gate, they turn around, and then he tells the kid, and the kid goes off and tells... Is that the last time we see Morpheus? Does he show up at all again?
Yeah,
He doesn't, does
so.
he?
No. Seemingly forever.
Well, I'm not convinced he's not in the next one. The more I think about it, it's so hilarious to me that, like, obviously two of those three characters are dead by the end of this movie, theoretically. And the next movie, the two that are dead are the ones that are in it, and the one that survived isn't. I think this is... I suspect... I don't know what's going... we can talk about it later if we want, but I suspect there's something else going on there. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
So, I think, yeah, so the idea of taking Neo's eyes is pretty cool, but doesn't really come to anything other than just a cool visual. The entire scene with Bane where he's on the ship and he's threatening, that whole sequence is just dull as anything. There's no tension to it. It takes Neo far too long to work out it's Bane.
Far too long.
Let's have a look. What else I've got in my notes? The final note on my file, Chris, just says "fucking shit show."
Again, the review could have been a lot quicker if you'd just gone with that.
Yeah. Oh, the moment they glimpse the sky is cool.
Oh, that was cool. Yeah, that was a nice moment.
I'd forgotten about that when they're flying to the Machine City and they head up and they go through where the clouds had been scorched. And obviously that was part of the plot of the previous movies, that humanity had like darkened the sky so that the machines couldn't get power from the sun. They'd like scorched the sky, I think is the phrase they used. So, you know, getting them going above that light layer, seeing the sun and coming back down is a really cool visual. It does make me think, but again, if you can just get up
a bit
there,
too quick,
then I don't understand why the machines haven't just built some solar panels on a platform. But fine,
because then we wouldn't get that cool moment, Dan.
Yeah, cool.
It's again very quick though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we don't live in that glory for long.
Yeah, should we do the triv, Chris? Because fuck it, hell.
Yep, let's triv it up.
Yep, I'm going to give you some trivia. Jack into the triv machine. We're going.
Ooh.
That's a Matrix thing, isn't it? Jack it in.
That is, yeah, you're right.
All right, here we go. And obviously, much of the trivia from the previous movie actually carries over to this one because it was one shoot, so some of the stuff from that isn't in this, but will have counted for. So the many injuries that happened during production, we talked about those last week. There's no injuries this week just because it's the same shoot. But there's some extra stuff that's specific to this movie, so let's talk about that. During the scene at the club, the Merovingian is wearing his tie in a style that is known as a Merovingian knot. So
cool.
He's wearing
Nice.
his tie in that knot. That's his name. That's cool. Good detail. The street corner where Neo and Smith fight in the crater is the same corner from which Neo made his phone call at the end of The Matrix. It's in Australia, as all these movies were shot mostly in Australia, but it's on the corner of Pitt, Hunter, and O'Connell Street in Sydney. And you can actually see the phone booth that Neo made his final call from the film The Matrix from on the right when they hit the ground. It's just
Cool.
Sure. They made a weird
triv is
choice
on
in releasing
fire.
this movie at a simultaneous time. And I got to question why, because this sounds like it was hard to coordinate. But basically, every major city in the world on November 5th, Chris, I just want to point that out because I watched this yesterday. We're recording this on November 6th. This movie originally released on November 5th.
Hey, the anniversary we watched it on. Nice.
Yeah. You know, it's a pile of shite, but we watched it on its anniversary, which has meaning, I think. But it was at 6 a.m. in Los Angeles, 9 a.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in London, 5 p.m. in Moscow, 11 p.m. in Tokyo, and then in Sydney it was 1 a.m. on the 6th. But they corresponded the times in over 50 additional countries, as well as those ones, so that they all literally were showing it at the exact same time. I have no idea why they decided to do that.
I don't see the point in that. I'd see the point in someone doing that now, internet spoilers, etc.
Right.
But that wasn't as big a thing then. Like, that just seems like they went a bit power mad.
Yeah, really weird. And I imagine the poor cinemas. It's coming out on the 5th. It's coming out on the 5th. Oh, you're in Sydney. Sorry, the earliest you can play it is 1 a.m. on the 6th. Why? Oh, we're lining it up. It's a whole global release thing. Okay. Hey, Russia. Yep. You know how the movie's coming out on the 5th? Yeah. You can't play it till 5 p.m. What about our morning shows? Yeah, don't do those. Okay.
Yeah,
why?
like, how did they choose what got to be the central time? Do you know what I mean? Like, I assume
so much work for very little gain. Yeah, I agree.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because 8 a.m. in the US is different to 8 a.m. in the UK. So what was the time? Do you know what the time everyone had to bend to was?
Yeah, I already read them. So it was 9 a.m. in Los Angeles, 9 a.m. in New York City, 2 p.m. in London, and 5 p.m. in Moscow, and 11 p.m. in Tokyo.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean, the people who got the most sensible one was New York. They got 9 a.m. 2 p.m. in London is fine. Cinemas seem to open around 11, 12 o'clock here, so it wouldn't have been the very first show of the day in any of those cinemas. But 2 is fine. Like, your afternoon shows, like, that makes a certain amount of sense. But again, Moscow, 5 p.m., 11 p.m. in Tokyo, and then poor Sydney at 1 a.m. So, yeah. Poor Los Angeles, actually. I feel bad for them, actually. The opposite problem. Having to open their cinemas at 6 a.m. Why are we in at 6 a.m.? Because they're doing a simultaneous release of The Matrix. But there's no one here at 6 a.m. Yeah, but we've got to play it at 6. Why? Just play it at 6. God damn it.
There's the bloke that was dressed as cosplaying as Morpheus when I saw Reloaded. Sat next to my mate Jim. He was there. Whole cinema to himself. He flew all the way to Los Angeles just so he didn't have to put up with my mate Jim.
Actually, to be fair, when Star Wars... What was the third one of the prequel trilogy called? Revenge of the
Sith?
Yeah. Revenge of the Sith came out. I saw that at like 5:30, 6 a.m. There was no buses. I had to walk from my house in like sort of outside of Manchester right into the city to see it because there was no public transport at that time because I had lectures at college at like 10 or something. And there was like a 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or something stupid like that showing of that. And I went and saw it. And we were officially the first people in the UK to see it, according to the reporter that was outside asking for opinions on the movie to play, like, audio vox pops for the radio later that day. And he shoved a mic in my face and was like, was it any good? And I was just like, yeah, better than the last two, but still shit. Or something like that.
Is that actually what you said?
Something in that to that, yeah. No, probably didn't use the word shit. I think I said better than the last two, but still nothing on the originals or something like that.
And then the dude looked down and, much like today, was like, "Oh shit, the mic's not recording." That was the start of your...
The funny thing is, I have no idea what radio station he was from or whatever, but yeah, it was so weird. Because Scott and I saw it with my mate Scott. Scott. We both, because we were both on the same course at college, so we both finished the movie and went to the same lecture. But as we came down the stairs, this guy, I saw Scott saw the guy with the microphone, and I think Scott managed to make himself disappear, which I was afterwards like, you clever fucker. I was just staring at the guy like, what are you here for? Not realizing I was about to be accosted. Afterwards I regretted having any interaction with him at all. I have no idea what radio station he was from. I don't know if that ever aired. Who knows? Who knows, Chris?
There we go. The secret origins of Nothing But Static.
Yeah.
Cool. So it had a pointless simultaneous release.
Yep. Great. And so in the final fight scene, many of the raindrops are sort of designed to be lines of Matrix code, and they sort of disappear and shift in the same way as the code do, and you can even see letters within them and stuff, apparently, if you pause it in certain frames. It's a subtle effect added to imply the Matrix is beginning to destabilize. The visual trick was seen really easily on very large, like IMAX theater screens, and is a little harder to see on smaller screens and televisions, so you might not have noticed it, but there you go. Only one full-sized APU, which I guess is the mech suit, was ever built, and it was completely re-rendered in AutoCAD. Yeah, you're fucking telling me. Parts of the physical build were detachable, so for in scenes involving different pilots and different APUs, they could shift out bits to make the physical things look different, and then they CGI'd over all of it anyway. The full model apparently weighed about 2 tons, which is a lot. I don't need to tell anyone that's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, I guess that means there was something physical for the actor to sit in, I suppose. They all still look fake and horrible in the movie, so failure on that front, I'm afraid. Sorry to the production team. I'm sure you're doing it on a very tight schedule, but the CGI definitely let you down, unfortunately. Or the blending, at least, of the CGI with the real. The product placement billboards in the subway chase scene were added in post-production. So during shooting, the poster spaces were occupied by like dilapidated posters for a fictional movie called Burly Man, starring Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, and Hugo Weaving. But then in the finished movie, they CGI'd those out and put in something else, which makes me think, why bother putting anything in there if you're going to CGI it out anyway? But whatever. The late Gloria Foster and her replacement Mary Alice had actually played sisters in a long-running Broadway play. So I guess Mary Alice was able to honour her late friend Gloria Foster through her performance by someone she actually knew. So I think that's really nice. If you're going to cast someone, at least cast someone who knew the actress. I think that's quite sweet.
Yeah, that is definitely.
In the scene where Morpheus, Trinity, and Seraph are chasing the train man, an advertisement for Tasty Wheat can be seen. Tasty Wheat was obviously mentioned in the original Matrix film when Mouse was trying to describe what the food in the real world tasted like. Mary Alice took the role of the Oracle for the third movie and the video games. That's just repeating the thing we already know. But the initial conversation with Morpheus and Trinity obviously has them referencing that she's a new version with changed appearance, but apparently one of the original plans was just to swap her out without anyone noticing. That would have been worse. Much worse.
That would be.
I understand why you do that in a movie where you can't explain away why someone's appearance is different. Like, you know, if it's a passing in it, like you know, like in Harry Potter, they had to recast Dumbledore. And I know Harry Potter is a world of magic, but it just wouldn't make any sense for Dumbledore to be like, I did a spell on myself to look different. So they just had to recast and, ignore. And that's, one of those things. Whereas in this movie, though, there's a perfectly good way to re-explain it. It would have been so weird to ignore. So I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, that would have been completely bizarre. And wouldn't have felt fair in a way to the actress.
Yeah. Agreed. The name of the station between the Source and the Matrix is called Mobile Ave. Mobile is an anagram of limbo. It's very clever, Chris. It's subtle. Yep. Real subtle Jesus imagery in this movie. When Neo gets taken in by the Source, there's a giant cross across his chest. It's not religious, don't worry. He's definitely not Christ. He's definitely not Christ.
I was literally like
talking to God, the God of the machines, and then fighting the devil in Smith. Don't worry about it. It's not religious. Don't worry about it. It's not there.
I literally, I think out loud went, oh, Limbo. See what he did there, movie.
Did you actually?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Great. What, was that in the theatre with that guy dressed as Morpheus 2 seats down?
No, I mean on this rewatch.
Yeah.
I doubt I noticed as a kid. I'll be honest about myself. I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah. Okay, I've got sometimes, Chris, when we do the triv, I have questions for the people who write the triv. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
So there was a really, really horrible one, which I'm not going to repeat, from the previous movie that I took out, and all I could think was, why did the person write this? Just horrendous. This one, so it says so limbo is the anagram of mobile, and then that limbo is the traditional place between heaven and earth, according to Catholicism, which is obviously if it's between the Matrix and the Source, it's fine. Then they added, this anagram has an additional subtext because Keanu Reeves is dyslexic.
Fucking hell. Wow. That's insane.
Who's writing this shit? And again, the one from the previous movie, much worse. If you go to the IMDb page for Reloaded, it won't take you long to find it. But who's writing these, and for what reason would you put that? For all, anyway. Keanu Reeves reportedly earned $15 million for the film, the equivalent of $400,000 for every minute of screen time, which makes sense because he's not in this movie that much.
Wow.
During the final fight sequence between Neo and Smith, and also during the end credits, the Sanskrit sloka is recited in a westernized style. Asatama Sat. I'm not going to read all that out. It's fucking huge. I guess it's the chanting, the vocals, and apparently it means lead me from the unreal to the real, lead me from the darkness to the light, lead me from the temporary to the eternal. Cool.
Cool.
Though never mentioned by name, based on information from the Animatrix, the Machine City is actually called 01 and is located in an empty quarter in Saudi Arabia. In the empty quarter. The empty quarter. That must be the name of a place in Saudi Arabia. This, as well as Zion, as the last human settlement, would imply that the main action of this film takes place somewhere in the Middle East, because the two places don't seem massively far from each other. Yeah, that's fair. The fun little piece of information here. We talked last week, Chris, that one of the ships is called Mjolnir, but all the characters call it the Hammer, because obviously no one can pronounce Mjolnir, which is fair. Obviously, that hammer in Norse legend always returns to its master, sparking lightning and thunder along the way. That's the ship they ride home in this movie, with lightning going everywhere.
That is cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I was on board with that. I thought that was a good
and
idea.
a lot of that stuff looked cool as well. There was no substance to it, but yeah, looked cool.
Yeah, the ship flying down the tunnels or whatever is a reasonably cool visual that goes on for too long.
I think, by the way, there's like a helicopter flying ahead, by the way, if anyone can hear that. My apologies.
Sound, man. We are true professionals. Every podcast we've recorded for the last 2 weeks has had some sort of sound interruption, it feels. The special effects...
Did you ever check? Could your builders be heard? Did you check?
Can what, sorry?
The builders that were arguing outside your door. Could they?
For listeners, we've recorded these all in a week, so I'm going to edit them all together because we've recorded them basically every other day for 6 days. We've done one, had a day off, done one, had a day off. So I haven't had a chance to edit that one yet, and I fear that they're going to be heard, but who knows? Who knows?
Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. So the special effects crew spent 2 months designing the apparatus to make the perfect raindrop. So they had a machine to make water on set fall that felt specifically like a big, almost cartoony raindrop, because I guess that's what the Matrix's raindrops would look like. I would say that I wouldn't have noticed if it hadn't been perfect. But good work. I feel so mean saying stuff like that. But it's so weird how much effort they're putting into small details of this, when the movie had so many big problems that needed to be addressed. Do you know what I mean? It makes So I sound really cynical, but they put all this time and effort into making the perfect raindrop, or for building those big, the big 2-ton rig for the actors to be sitting in a machine, so that when they're filming those mech scenes, they can feel something. And yet the final product, the raindrops don't matter, because that whole sequence is a muddled, dark, blurry mess of Neo and Smith floating about and punching each other, and the CGI shooting, robots thing is looks like a computer game. It's so much work for so little payoff. I just feel bad for the people who did it, to be honest with you. Anyway, and Mary Alice, who gets to play the Oracle in this movie, actually played Lawrence Fishburne's mother in her first, in his first professional stage appearance when he was 10 years old. So they knew each other as well. It's quite sweet. The crew of the Hammer, for some unknown reason, all have nicknames related to firearms. One of them is called AK, which is obviously a reference to the AK 47, which is a Kalashnikov series of automatic rifles. Then they have two other people on the ship. One's called Colt and one's called Mauser, which are both the names of guns also. There's one member of the ship called Maggie, which they speculate is short for Magnum, which is a type of gun also.
There you go. Nice.
Yeah, why? Don't know. When Neo goes to see the Oracle in her apartment, the jazz standard "I'm Beginning to See the Light" is playing in the background. A different version of the same song also plays in the corresponding scene from the first Matrix. References. In the Matrix, the human resistance reveal that they do not know what year it is, but that they reckon it's closer to 2199 than 1999. In Reloaded, it's revealed that resistance has been created and destroyed up to 5 times, each cycle lasting approximately a century. Therefore, it is likely to be hundreds of years later than that estimate. So there you go.
Nice.
Sure. Probably closer to the
is
year
that
3000 than anything else. Oh, they'll meet Busted soon.
That's I really appreciate that joke.
Thank you.
I think that's made this whole triv. Like, this triv, you can tell that, like, a lot of the triv has already been done for Reloaded. Like, because a lot of it's great, but some of it's like like the one about the actress playing his mum is essentially these two actors knew each other before this film. Hey, so you can, but it's all worth it for that busted joke.
Great. Well, you'll be happy to hear there's only 3 bits of trim left. So let's do them. In the last scene of the film, on the bench the Oracle sits on, it has a small plaque on it that says, "In memory of Thomas Anderson."
Oh, that's nice.
That's a good detail, isn't it?
Yeah. Again,
and actually, sorry, there are only 2 bits of trivia. Oh, God, sorry.
I said, again, would rather, a bit more time on the plot, maybe, but, still.
Nice detail.
Nice nod.
There's only 2 bits of trivia left, Chris, because one of them was actually the fact that they cast Ian Bliss because of his great impersonation of Hugo Weaving. So, we're finally there, Chris. Brum brum, beep beep, cars exist.
Tight corner.
Was that a baby dinosaur having a little cry? What was that noise you just did?
That was a car screeching to a halt, much like the triv.
That's the car going by.
Anyway, you ruined it.
Beep, beep,
the
honk,
first
honk.
bit of that, the first bit of that was better than what I did, but then that sort of weird noise you made at the end fucked it.
Just some weird shit fake car noises. So the 1963 Lincoln Continental that appeared in the other 2 movies reappears in this one. They use it to bring Neo to the Oracle during the opening section of the movie. There is also obviously the fight in the car park of the Merovingians that has a bunch of cars in it, but it's just a bunch of expensive cars. And I'm not reading the list. I refuse.
Yeah, there you go. Fair play.
The only relevant one is the one the actual lead characters drive in, which is the car that's appeared in all the other 2 movies. Otherwise, there are very few cars in this movie.
There you go. My question, Dan. Not my question, because we got to do slight, theories, predictions, whether we're excited for 4, but also a discussion that we've teased, and I don't think it's actually going to take that long, but that we've teased but not really done. So just wanted to bring it up. Is this film series was streets ahead in terms of its kind of multimedia approach. I think some of that, personally, I haven't rewatched any of it, but I think on memory, some of it worked better than other. For example, the Animatrix, it was fantastic. Fantastic series of animated shorts. But I think, and this maybe comes from the rewatch, I think whilst a brilliant idea and very immersive because it's more involved and connected to the films as Enter the Matrix is, and by all accounts, you'll presumably be able to tell me, a brilliant game, Reloaded especially feels like it's missing bits because obviously it's filled in by Enter the Matrix. So Niobe in particular is a bit like, huh? Because actually all of her stories are in Enter the Matrix, and I think you feel that when you watch Reloaded. So I have absolute, fuck yeah for what they did, but I think some of it was more successful than others.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting as well is, I mean, even that, that young kid that's in Zion, and when they get there, Neo's like, oh, fucking hell, this kid again. And he's all like, Neo, thank you for saving me. That kid. That's
he's the kid that's then, he's the kid that's then in this film, isn't he?
Yeah. But that's from an Animatrix short where Neo saves him. So that's it is very cleverly integrated. Don't get me wrong. But it is also when you watch it out of the context of those things, which, by the way, I mean, fucking good luck trying to get hold of Enter the Matrix now. You can watch the scenes from it, but the experience of playing that game, you'd struggle to find a copy of it that worked on any modern day consoles. You'd have to crack out an old console, probably. It'd be a whole fucking faff. But also, one of the other things is there was post-movie content, Chris, that they claimed at the time was canon in a game called The Matrix Online, or was it Path of Neo? One of those two was supposed to be canon and after the movie, and I'm pretty sure they killed Morpheus in that.
Oh, wow.
So, is that still canon? Who knows? That's the problem, isn't it? It's hard to know what they're going to actually keep with the fourth one coming up.
Yeah, but I think, every sort of big franchise has that. That whole, Star Wars and Doctor Who have kind of had to do Big Finish isn't necessarily canon, it's another world. Star Wars has those other stories. Even the fact that we, live in a world now where loads of films such as Terminator and Halloween, etc., just have the ability to go, okay, ignore those 7 films. This is a sequel to this film. It's like, all right. So, yeah, I don't.
You know what's funny as well? I think
now, isn't
it? I actually also acquired a copy of the Animatrix, and I was actually going to watch it before doing this. It's an hour and 40 minutes. After Reloaded, I was so enthused. I was like, you know what? I'll watch both, and we can talk about it on the thing, or maybe I'll watch the scenes from Enter the Matrix, and we can talk about it on the podcast at the end, and I can be all informed on it and have rewatched them recently. This movie sapped all enthusiasm for the Matrix that I almost didn't want to do this podcast. That's honestly, last night, I was so done with it all. I was like, I can't believe that I had to sit through that for 2 hours. 2 hours and 9 excruciating minutes.
Yeah.
And I was just like, nope, don't want to touch it. The Animatrix is probably way better than this, but I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to go near it. I didn't want to talk about it. Nadia was like, how's the movie? I'm like, I don't know. Nope, don't want to talk about it. Bad.
Which then leads me to, Dan, how are you feeling about 4 then?
Well, I was very excited for 4. Having gone through this, I don't know anymore, Chris. Truthfully, because I don't know that you can fix this. And I'm not saying that the job of the 4th movie is to fix the sins of the past. But this is so broken now, I don't know how a 4th movie can be good while carrying over, which it has to, because it's in continuity. So I will say, some of the problems that occur in The Matrix Revolutions are problems born of choices made in Matrix Reloaded. I think The Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions are imbalanced because they actually needed to swap some of the sequences around. Like, imagine if, for example, one of the big set pieces from that movie didn't occur until this one. So we'd have one more big, decent set piece in The Matrix.
Yeah.
Would that have balanced it out a bit better? So, some of the choices made to be the most in the Matrix movie of Reloaded affects Revolutions. Some of the story choices made in Reloaded. So that stuff just has to carry, unfortunately. So the choices made in this movie have to influence the next one, and I just, I'm wondering how much, Lana Wachowski has been doing a Hagrid impression the last few years, looking back at this stuff and looking at Enter the Matrix, looking at the Animatrix, looking at Reloading Revolutions, going, "I should not have said that. I should not have said that." I wonder, I just, how much of this stuff are they going to be like, how do we get around what we've done? Because I feel like they've written themselves into a corner. It could be great. It really could. But I'm less enthusiastic now, having watched this, which is bad.
They've never been George Clooney on Batman and Robin. Do you think they've definitely done? Because has there been a public kind of? Have you read an interview where they've gone, right? Yeah, some of that we fucked up.
No, not at all. No, but what I'm saying what I'm saying is though, I'm wondering when I'm sitting down to, when I'm imagining anybody sitting down to write a movie and it's going to continue the universe, having a bunch of interesting ideas and wanting to tell that story, and then looking at the stuff that had been done before it, like if they want to use Morpheus in this movie, technically they killed him in a fucking video game.
Well, I don't. I think Yahya is playing like a digital version of Morpheus.
I would love it. I think they're recreating the circumstances of the first Matrix to wake Neo up, and it's different people. I think doing that.
Yeah, but you think Fishbourne's Morpheus is doing that, and presumably using Yahya as an avatar? Or
no. I think there's a group of rebels that have gotten into a sub-version of the Matrix that they've trapped Neo in. I reckon the machines have trapped Neo in a Matrix within the Matrix to keep him compliant and out of the way. Maybe there won't be a new one born if we keep the old one in purgatory, essentially. And this whole version of the Matrix he's living in is just for him, to keep him content. It's another system of control. Mm-hmm. But some rebels find out about it, and to jog his memory and to bring him out of that, they try recreating stuff from the first one to sort of break him out of it. So, he shows up big, as Morpheus as he can be. That the lady with the blue hair with the rabbit tattoo. That's all designed to jog his memory.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, but why do you think Fishbourne's in the movie then?
I think once we get out of all of that, there's still potentially a Morpheus in the real world.
Right, okay. Because I'm not so confident we'll see Fishbourne. I agree with and like that notion that maybe the rebels are trying to get him out by recreating. I think there's a possibility from the mirror shot where we see like an older Neo that maybe it's set in the future. I think it's probably set especially rewatching this one, the kind of orange color hue that the Matrix that we end up with in Revolutions has sort of that, there's a real color palette tone of that, which makes me think it's in that version of the Matrix. I think the machines have resurrected Neo. I don't know why, but I just think they have and plugged him back in. Yeah, which means they would have resurrected Trinity as well, which makes sort of less sense to me. Or is it just a bit stranger? Yeah,
I think Trinity isn't resurrected. I suspect they have created a digital program version of Trinity as part of the system of control.
I feel like that's more likely with Morpheus. I don't know why. I just feel like...
Well, no, because the machines wouldn't want to... But the story I'm going for is that the machines are keeping... So basically, Neo saves everyone, and his physical body dies, or that's how it appears in the movie, and he sort of sacrifices himself to take out Smith, yes? But the machines go, well, there's still some of his code, some of his consciousness, digitally existing in our system. So what we need to do, basically, is lock that off somewhere, because he's too powerful. He's going to cause us problems. So I think they've hidden him away. It makes sense for them to keep him compliant by having him meet cute with a fake Trinity, so that he's not yearning for something, not looking to escape. Why would the machines give him a fake Morpheus? That would only encourage him to break through the systems, would it not?
Maybe it wasn't the machines then. Maybe it was, like you say, the rebels. But I think my main thing is I don't think there's an equivalent Morpheus in the real world. I think Morpheus is purely digital. I think there's more likely, because it was directly in response to you think that of Trinity. Mm-hmm. I think Trinity and Neo will exist in the real world, and Morpheus won't.
Yeah, see, I think part of the reason that doesn't sit right with me is because I don't see a story reason why you would choose to do it that way, but they're the two characters that died in this one. they're the two that it makes the least sense to exist in the real world.
So having just
but also, and I'm sorry, I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone. So maybe if you've not been paying too much attention to the trailer or whatever, cover your ears for a second here. But we already know that's probably not a real Trinity, because in the trailer, there's a shot where she screams and it echoes out, and there's versions of her. And if you pause it on that shot, the other Trinity faces that are coming out from the side of her face are different women.
Yeah, that's cool. I can see your logic on the Trinity point, but, whilst I agree with you, Dan, story-wise, you don't know why they'd do that, but having just watched Revolutions, is story-wise, that wouldn't make sense. There's the potential that won't matter, I feel.
Right. Yeah, 100%. But I'm trusting to a certain extent that, these, let's be honest, we both know that the reason these two movies are such an execution, let's just say a failure to execute. Let's just say that. Good ideas, failure to execute. The reason that's the case, I suspect, is not because the Wachowskis aren't talented enough to pull it off. They're almost revolutionary filmmakers. There's so much incredible stuff in these movies. I think what essentially happened was the first one's a hit, turn it over with sequels in X number of years, capitalize on the popularity of your franchise. I feel like maybe they didn't think it at the time, maybe they thought they had enough time, but I feel like both these movies needed, in the script writing stage, a couple more years of work, basically.
Yeah, I am excited by the notion that this is a story that's been percolating.
Right. So that gives me some hope that it won't be a complete
I'd agree with
mess.
That. Yeah, but I don't think it's going to... Like you say, it's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of people are going to rewatch, but how deep into connections to the Reloaded and Revolutions they go is going to be really interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. I saw a really theory that said that the new one was going to potentially be like Neo is trapped in a world where the Matrix is a film that exists. Because there's that scene where the guy says, "We're going back to the Matrix," and he looks like a sleazy, film studio exec. So someone was saying that maybe the Matrix have trapped Neo in a world where he thinks he's actor Keanu Reeves.
I think there's two... I don't know if it'll be that exactly, but there's too many opportunities for it not to almost be the dramatic action version of Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I reckon they're going to use meta reboot stuff. Do you know what I mean? I think they're going to refer to it as a reboot, almost with a knowing nod and wink.
Yeah, because because these two movies are an absolute categorical rejection of the cash-in, sequel. Because they, again, which is what I deeply respect about these two movies, is that these are not cash-in sequels. This is two people finishing their art project, and maybe under circumstances that where things were a little bit quicker than maybe it could have been and should have been, and the execution, wasn't to my taste or whatever. But I massively respect that that's the way they went, and it's very much a Wachowski movie. There's no studio interference here, because if there was studio interference here, these movies would have been very fucking different. I can tell you that with no hesitation. And I feel like this upcoming one is probably going to be a similar thing, because I just don't see either Wachowski coming back to the world of the Matrix without having,
so do you think
a reason to do so, or a story they want to tell, or something interesting to do with it that isn't just rehashing the first one, because they've already rejected the idea of traditional sequels. So this is definitely going to be something unusual.
So does that mean you agree with me that it could get quite meta and references to
Yes.
reboots and stuff like that?
100%. Nothing is off the. Honestly, nothing is off the table. I'm speculating. I'm saying, I think they're going to do this. I think they're going to do that. Honestly, and or anything else. Like there's no real like. There's nothing. Basically, while I, in conversation, will casually sort of say, I think that if I was putting money on it right now, I think Lawrence Fishburne is somehow in this movie, even if it is just one scene at the end of the movie where Neo finally escapes the Matrix again into a body somehow for the first time, and there's a real Morpheus, original recipe Morpheus is there. Lawrence Fishburne and he's in one scene at the end of the movie. Even right now I'm saying I'd put my money on that being potentially an option. Fucking, there's just as much chance as none of that happening. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah. I think
I'm giving my I'm doing my sort of logical. What's the story that you're most likely to tell? What might you do? But like, as you pointed out, in a world where these are the sequels to the first Matrix, like it's just blind speculation at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if I'm planting flags, I think Morpheus is a program. I think it's definitely a version of Morpheus. I mean, the trailer makes that clear. There's too much echoing in terms of the fighting style, speech patterns, red pill, blue pill, etc. But I think Morpheus is probably a program. I don't think we'll see Fishburne, and I think the machines have for some reason resurrected Neo. And like you say, there's a band of rebels trying to get him out. Thing is, Dan. That's coming. You know what else is coming? Holidays are coming. Where are we going,
sell me
Dan?
a Coke.
For our first... I fucking love that advert. It still gets me. Still love it. Where are we going, Daniel, the manual, for the first Christmas, movie? We're doing 2 Christmas movies. Your choice first, my choice second.
Yep.
Where are we going first, baby?
So, a couple of weeks ago, when we first sort of settled that we were going to do the 2 Christmas movies, I had an immediate choice I went with, and was like, it's going to be that. It's going to be that. It's one of my favourites. It's classic. Don't know whether you've seen it. And then I changed my mind like about 2 weeks ago. So, I guess 3 or 4 weeks ago, or just before your wedding, so like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I had a movie in mind, and then literally about 2 weeks ago, I changed it, and I've not gone from this. And this is, I think it's maybe the longest enduring Christmas film. So we're going to be going all the way back, Chris, to 1946 to watch It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah. As soon as you said enduring, I'm like, well, presumably, It's a Wonderful Life. That's exciting to hear. Cool.
Yeah, because I suppose I could say my other option now, because it'd be a year before we even consider a Christmas movie again. My other one was Muppet Christmas Carol, which is one of my favourite Christmas movies ever. I absolutely love that movie to bits. Many people have said it's actually one of the most weirdly one of the most accurate retellings of Christmas Carol that exists, and it's also super fun, full of great songs and levity and all that. But I genuinely, I love It's a Wonderful Life. I've not seen it in a couple of years, but I know. I've talked about this a lot. I work with a lot of young kids. I work with a lot of youngsters, and there's a lot of things from the past they're just like, ew, old things, but they're all very fond of It's a Wonderful Life because they watch it with their parents every Christmas or whatever. And I just think, like, that's amazing for a generation that, like, some of them genuinely tell me, oh, black and white, with other movies. Yet It's a Wonderful Life endures eternally. I don't understand how, but I do. It's a wonderful film. It's a Wonderful Life. But like rewatching it again with a bit of a analysis brain instead of just putting it on to enjoy it, which, as I said, I haven't done in a couple of years. But it's an absolute classic. I love it, and I'm looking forward to giving it a watch.
Cracking choice. I'm excited to watch it.
And I felt like a little bit it was the safest choice to not step on what you might choose. Because obviously all the modern day, like all your Santa Clauses and stuff. I feel like that's that's potentially what you're going to select for the movie after it.
Probably, yeah. I think it's slightly. I think with the Christmas ones more than any other. Although I don't know if we've necessarily done this in the past. I think we have to slightly like if you'd picked the Santa Claus, I probably wouldn't have picked Elf. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I think that is the way I should go. Do you know what I mean? I think if I picked Michael Caine's A Christmas Carol, I think there would be people out there that looked at the Christmas films this year and went, "Oh, like I think I have to go. I think I will go modern." But that's also what I would want to do. There are three Christmas films I think that we watch every single year, and I might have to roll the dice and make it one of them.
That's fair. No, that's fair. That's good. And at some point, I mean, Chris will never choose Elf because Chris thinks Elf is overrated. I will at some point choose Elf because I think Elf is the closest thing we have to a modern classic, with the exception of Klaus, which came out a couple of years ago on Netflix and is amazing.
I would agree. As much as I'm not a big Elf guy, I don't know if overrated's the right word. It's just never connected to me in that way. I absolutely agree that it was the last true Christmas classic. Klaus should be, and is and will become that for people. But at the moment, Elf is the
because I guess
Elf
the
is
true sign of a Christmas classic is like that it endures. Because a lot of people think Arthur Christmas was a modern Christmas classic, and I do think that's a really great film. It's shockingly good, actually. It that film is way better than it has any right to be, if I'm being completely honest with you. But yeah, it's not quite endured. It's not become a thing that people watch every year. Well, some people might, but not a huge number of people. I'm hoping Klaus sort of survives the test of time and becomes a Christmas classic people watch every year. But yeah, I think the last modern one is probably Elf. So we'll do Elf at some point, but not this year, it seems. So it's going to be...
Well, maybe I'll pick it.
Maybe I'll pick it. I find that unlikely, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I find that unlikely because I know your feelings on it are not, it doesn't. Yeah, as you said, it doesn't really connect with you.
Say that again, sorry.
So there you go. We're coming back next week. We're going to watch. Not next week. Is it next week? Yeah, I guess next week for that. And then the week after
there'll be a slight. Yeah, there'll be a slight. Listener-wise, there'll be a slight delay between the Rewind reviews finishing and analysing Avatar starting to keep us on track with the schedule, because obviously we've put all three of these Matrix ones up in 1 week. But yeah, in terms of the Rewind reviews, that's coming in a week's time, baby.
A week's time, baby. So you can hear it now if you'd like. Head over to the Patreon, patreon.com/nothingmutstatic, and give us some money. just give us some money, damn it. And you can hear episodes a week early. We also have the ability for you to ask questions. If you'd like to support us in a way that is not financial, you're welcome to continue listening, obviously. Tell a friend, that helps. Or you can review us on one of the various platforms that exist. So you can throw us like a like or a comment on YouTube. You can go over to iTunes and rate and review. You can do that also on Google Play and Spotify. And if you do that, don't review the podcast. I mean, you can if you want, review the podcast, but I think that's quite boring. Tell us about your Rewind review. What movie is nostalgic for you that you've looked back at recently, or maybe one you'd like to look back on, why it means something to you, what your sort of experience watching it for the first time was. Feel free, throw them in the comments. At some point, maybe in the next season of Rewind reviews, I'll read a bunch. So there you go.
Yeah.
Because obviously
nice.
we record these in advance, which means that they're only just starting to air now, which means all of the all the requests for that I've done so far in the sort of 9 episodes of this we've done this series are only just starting to go out, and therefore we're only just going to start getting them as we finish the series, which is a shame. But it means for the next set we'll read through some of them. So please leave those comments and reviews, and we'll take a look at them. In God, once we finish this series, 20 weeks time.
Yeah, good
That's
times.
Thought,
I'm excited already. It's time to start thinking about the trilogy.
Oh God, yeah. What trilogy are we going to pick?
There's a few options. It might be around the same time as the Lord of the Rings TV show.
That's a thought.
Yeah.
There you go.
Obviously, there's the Spider-Man, which we didn't do. So yeah, there's trilogies out there.
That's right, guys. That's the note we're ending on. There's trilogies out there. As always, you can also send us your thoughts on what trilogies are out there via Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. I do also have Instagram, but I don't really like. I don't post a lot of stuff on there for anyone that'll be of interest to anyone who listens to this. So it's at that Dan Doolan. I always forget your Instagram handle, Chris. Is it just Chris Billingham? Do you not want to give it out?
No, I think it's like Chris Bill.
Do you want me to say it on the podcast?
Huh? Oh no, that isn't me being. It? Yeah, if you know what it is, if you
I've just pulled it up. It's Chris Bill 06.
There you go. Boom.
How recent is that photo?
Probably not very. Hold on, Instagram, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My cover photo?
Yeah, the main one. You in the blue shirt, the blue stripy shirt, maybe.
Not recent at all.
Okay.
If you're thinking, hey, he looks like he's lost weight. I had at that point.
Yeah, I realised I trapped myself there by asking how recent that photo was.
Yeah, no, that was from that was back in Once Upon. In fact, I think that photo is a screenshot from a Once Upon a Review video.
Is it?
So that's how long ago that is.
That is a long time ago. All right. Well, I won't
depressing.
say you're looking true.
I was there. No, that's fine. Just not so much now. I had a more depressing moment than that the other day at a meeting where I was talking about different types of video, and I pulled up a video that I'd been in from like towards the end of lockdown last year, and just opened it and was like, oh fucking hell! I've put on weight since then. Like it was peak Joe Wicks, and I don't think it's arrogant to say, Dan, I was looking good. Like it really, sometimes you just have a moment that really, really makes it clear what lockdown 3 did to you. My bad.
Anywho, thanks everyone for listening. Sorry, Chris, for accidentally throwing you under the bus there.
Yeah. But if we've learned anything, trilogies exist, and so do carbohydrates on my face.
So to end this podcast, Chris, on the note that I started, endings are hard, aren't they?
Bye.
Oh no, we got.
Hold on.
We got to do it proper, Chris.
I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.